my name is Rich Smith. I'm the co-founder of Atlas MedStaff, and I've been staffing travel nurses since 2004. If I've learned one thing over the years, it's that the best advice about travel nursing for travel nurses doesn't come from me or an agency. It comes from you and your peers. That's what this podcast is all about. Travel nursing and your experiences on the road. Welcome to the Atlas Life.
The Atlas Life is about living your life to the fullest. And if that's telling the stories of your adventures or telling the stories of your work or telling the stories of your patients or whatever that might be, HIPAA, obviously, we can't tell those stories. But in generalities, telling the stories of those things that you experience on the unit is what this is all about. This week, we talked to Caitlin Currie. Caitlin was an ER nurse, is still an ER nurse, turned travel nurse recruiter. So in the first part, you're going to hear her stories as a travel ER nurse. In the second part, you're going to hear her stories as a travel nurse recruiter, and then understand what the differences are there, what the similarities are there, and then what it takes if you're at the end of your rope, if you think, maybe I need a change. This is someone who's made that change and who has been wildly successful making that change. So part one, Caitlin Currie, ER nurse.
My name is Caitlin Currie. I am an ER nurse, first and foremost. I am now a recruiter with Atlas MedStaff. I was an ER nurse for almost 2 years prior to traveling. And then I was traveling for 1 year as an ER nurse before becoming a recruiter here at Atlas MedStaff.
So Caitlin, why did you start traveling in the first place?
I started traveling as a travel nurse mainly for one reason, which is kind of what everyone did, at least back in the day, to travel, to see the world. I am from South Carolina. I'm from a smaller city, and I grew up there. I never moved away, so I generally just wanted to explore. So kind of wanted to go anywhere that I could get my hands on.
Okay, so why did you become a nurse in the first place then? Tell me the history of kind of why you decided the nursing career was for you.
I wanted to become a nurse because there were other people in my family that were also nurses. They were LPNs, so licensed practical nurses, and it's kind of what they say in families where people who have their associate's degree, you want to be that first person in the family to have your bachelor's degree. So I was the first person in our family to become a registered nurse, which was kind of my main goal. I wanted to become the first person in our family to become a registered nurse. And I love being able to help people. I love being able to take care of people. I like being advocates for my patients. And I think it is very overcoming when you can see your patients coming in on their worst day and being able to take care of them and being able to discharge them home when they're basically not completely better, but you can see them almost do a 180 and they're able to, most of the time, walk out.
All right, so thinking about that, what's the best part of travel nursing? And then the second part is, what's the, I don't want to say worst part, because I get it, every day is different and there are difficult days and there are good days. But what's the best part and what's the hardest part of travel, of nursing?
The best part of travel nursing specifically is the experience, the traveling. You go to your assignments generally 8 to 13 weeks. So you get to experience multiple different areas if you don't extend. So you get to experience different areas. We went to Washington, New York, Nevada, and we did 3 assignments within a year. So you could do maybe up to 4 assignments depending on how you take your assignments, whether you do 8 weeks, even if you do 13 weeks without any time off. But the hardest part is for travel nursing specifically, being away from your family for long times. the hardest part of nursing specifically is 12-hour shifts are difficult, especially on days where you have very difficult patients. You have difficult caseloads, you have patients that just take a toll on you. Maybe you have a young patient who passes away, or even an older patient who you have been taking care of for a couple days in a row who passes away. Those patients, you kind of start to think of as your family. You take care of them like family. So they can get very difficult to, when you do take care of those patients, it can start to take a toll on you as well. That's, other than having to leave your family, you start to think of them as family. So it's difficult in that aspect.
I'm going to throw you a curveball here.
Sure.
There are days, and I know this is true, there are days, especially within the past 2 years, 19 months, that have been more difficult than others.
Right.
Were there days that you were just like, that's it, I'm done. I can't do it anymore?
Oh, all the time. Absolutely. Especially when we went to New York City. We were actually in Jersey City, New Jersey, so across the Hudson River from New York City. But there were days, like flashback to literally walking into our very first day of our assignment. I'll do a really quick synopsis of it. So pretty much walking into our first day of orientation, 8 a.m., sit down, they kind of throw orientation together. We were basically submitted to a job, offer within 12 hours or so, sent off to Jersey City within 9 days, basically, of being given this offer. 8 a.m., orientation thrown together. 8:30, there have already been 3 rapid responses, 2 or 3 cardiac arrests called, overhead. So we're kind of like, what have we gotten ourselves into at this point? We have no computer training classes. There's there's no training whatsoever. There's no orientation. It's more so, this is what this hospital is. This is how it's going to be. There's no policies. This is just how the hospital is run right now. If you need anybody, these are their numbers. These are who you call. This is where you go. These are how you take your patients to and from the floor if you get a bed. We got 3 hours of orientation on the floor. The very next day was your first shift. And as soon as you walk in, the entire emergency room is COVID patients. Every single one of them are ventilated. So at that point, it was kind of like, what are we getting ourselves into, and are we really supposed to be here? So, that was kind of one of the first times it was like, maybe we should back on up and, take a step back. But, there have been many times, many days where you definitely kind of want to throw in the towel and think about, what am I doing? But then you start thinking, this is my job. This is what I signed up for. I love what I do. I love taking care of my patients. I love seeing the outcomes. I love seeing family members being reunited with their family members and the smiles on their faces, because it makes you have smiles, and it's a heartwarming, I love when there's a good ending to the story, and I love being a part of that good ending.
In those scenarios, though, you're operating strictly on your skills and adrenaline. Like, that's it, right?
Right, especially in the ER, yeah.
Especially in the ER. Was there ever a scenario where you thought, was there ever a time when you thought, I can't do this? This is too much? And honestly, if the answer is no, that's okay. But
right.
There has to be a breaking point at some point. We know how difficult it is right now.
During COVID specifically, no. I have other stories where I definitely thought that. It has to do more with children and those stories, but yes, there have been times where I have thought that.
And that certainly couldn't be easy.
No, absolutely not. Because people say it all the time, you should not have to bury your child.
Mm-hmm. But you witnessed I mean, that it had to have been it had to have been a thing that you witnessed, right? I mean, that's
unfortunately,
right. Yeah.
yes.
So going in, so keeping that in mind, but then just
Right.
in general, nursing in general, like what was the hardest thing for you to learn going into your nursing career?
I think the hardest thing that I had to learn was there's someone else out there having a worse day than you. So when you go to work, that door, you need to leave whatever you are struggling with outside, because someone else is going to have a worse day than you as soon as you walk in that door. I think that was the hardest part for me, because there are, even though you may not necessarily think that someone is having an emergency, that person is thinking that they are having an emergency.
Okay, so now you understand what it was like for Caitlin as an ER nurse, as a travel ER nurse, what she experienced in the unit, what she experienced from her patients, and the little bits that her patients left with her along the way. Why did she choose to become a travel nurse recruiter? Why did she pick us? Why did she decide a career change this early in her life was something that she wanted to do? And was it the right choice? So now we hear from Caitlin Currie, the travel nurse recruiter. Now, let's shift gears, because I think for the first time, and I'm being absolutely sincere about this, there's a lot of nurses that work for Atlas.
Right.
We have a lot of either nurses or former travel nurses that are now recruiters.
Right.
I believe for the first time, just listening to you talk right here, I fully understand why you made the shift from being an ER nurse to a travel nurse recruiter. So you can be the advocate for them.
Absolutely.
So because you have stood in those shoes, you've been that person, and now you can do that for 30, 40, 50, 60 people, different people, right?
Absolutely.
You can affect real change to people in your industry that do the exact same thing that you do.
Absolutely.
So let's ask those exact same questions then. Why did you decide I want to be a travel nurse recruiter?
For those exact reasons that you said. I loved being an advocate for my patients. Absolutely loved it. On their worst days, I wanted to be that for them. I wanted to make the changes for them. So to become a recruiter, I can now be an advocate for my nurses, basically in the same aspect that I was for my patients. So when they are having the absolute worst day of their lives, whether it's dealing with patients or dealing with management or dealing with whoever, whether it's even just in their family, I can still be an advocate. I can still be that person that they can reach out to. And there have been several instances where, my nurses call me at 10, 11 o'clock at night and we just talk and we vent. And, there's never a time that I don't feel like I can't advocate for them in whatever way they need.
Give me an update. Where are you right now? Where are you living? You're obviously in Omaha right now visiting with
Right.
us, which is awesome.
Loving it,
I
too.
love that you're here. Yeah, I love it. So where are you right now? And is that your forever home? Is that what you're gonna, is this where you want to be?
So currently living in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. Will not be forever home. Not sure where the forever home is going to be. Still kind of looking, open to suggestions if anybody has any. So we love the Denver, Colorado area. Open to surrounding areas as well. My significant other and I, we actually just bought a truck and we're going to buy a camper. So we're gonna do some road searching in some areas and, gonna go do some searching that way and see if we can find, some areas along the way that we also like. Omaha's a beautiful area. We had never expected to even be, we were blown away actually by the area. So it's maybe something we can add to our list.
Look, Denver's beautiful. Omaha's great.
So-
I really enjoy Omaha, but Denver is pretty fantastic. If you
Denver's
ended up in
beautiful.
Denver, there's a whole lot of worse places you could end up. Quite
There's
honestly.
there's a lot of worse places to end up than Denver.
So, having recruited for a while now, what's the best part of recruiting?
The best part, number one, the flexibility. It's a job that you can take on the road. It is definitely a job that I work more hours than I did as a nurse, but I truly love being there for my nurses. I have made some absolutely true friendships out of the nurses that I work with. I mean, there are some nurses that I talk to on a daily basis, and it's not about work. There's nothing that we even talk to about work. We talk about their dogs and their kids or their vacations that they're going on. If they're gonna buy a new car or if they're moving. So it has opened a new door and so many new friendships that I could have never, ever imagined.
So what's the inverse of that? What's the hardest part? What's the part that you like the least?
There's not even really a part that I like the least. If I had to pick one, giving up my hours as a nurse, working 36 hours, and as soon as I was done with my 36 hours for the week, that was it. So as soon as I was done with my 12-hour shift for the day, there was the door, there was my clock out, and I was done. And if the facility called and said, hey, do you want to work overtime? Or text me and say, hey, do you want to work overtime? I didn't have to respond, but my nurses are there. If they have a problem, I'm there to answer it. So, it's all about give and take, but I wouldn't change it for the world. So,
if you had to give advice to maybe a nurse out there that is feeling burnt out, that's feeling like she might be at the end of her rope, and that maybe recruiting might be for her, him, either one, what would that advice be?
Do it. Easy enough. 2 words, do it. After a year long of working with COVID patients and starting in Seattle when it started, I was definitely burnt out. I thought 5 weeks was going to be enough time off for me to kind of find a new love for nursing between my New Jersey contract and my Las Vegas contract, and it was not enough time. I needed something new, I needed a change, and recruiting was a huge thing for me. It opened so many new doors. I've met so many new people, I've made so many new friendships, and I would not trade it for the world.
So that was Caitlin Currie, travel nurse turned travel nurse recruiter. The story's not typical. There are a lot of travel nurses out there that have chosen to become travel nurse recruiters. The majority of you are still on the road doing what you do every single day. You don't want to leave bedside. You don't want to leave your career as a nurse, and that's okay. Being a recruiter isn't for everyone. I've said that before. It is a very difficult job, and you heard Caitlin say it too. When you clocked out for the week, you clocked out for the week. Does a travel nurse recruiter ever get to technically clock out? The answer is no. They are involved with their travelers 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The only time that maybe they're not is when they're sleeping. And honestly, there have been times where I've heard stories of people waking them up in the middle of the night for absolutely good reasons and talking to them about what happened on a contract. We know most of you work nights anyway, and we work days here in the office in general. So is it for you? That's for you to decide. But you've already decided that travel nursing is for you. So we are going to continue telling these stories every couple weeks. Is that where we're at, Dolan? Every couple weeks, probably? He's shaking his head, yes. So every couple of weeks, we're going to tell these stories of you on the road, doing what you do, why you do it, how you do it, the good stuff, the bad stuff, the hard parts, the awesome parts, the adventures that you have, the heartbreak that you feel. Nothing's off limits. We're going to tell those stories in an audio format here. So as you're driving from one contract to another, you can hear it directly from your peers that you made the right choice, that travel nursing is for you, that what you chose to do with your career is absolutely correct. You are on the right road, no matter how hard or how difficult it may seem at that time or in your lowest times. There's always good times too. Have faith in what you're doing, have faith in your choices, and then have faith that you chose the right company to represent you as a travel nurse as you go on these adventures. That's what the Atlas life is all about, and that's what I'm going to do every single week as I tell you these stories.
Hi, my name is Rich Smith. I'm the co-founder of Atlas MedStaff, and I've been staffing travel nurses since 2004. If I've learned one thing over the years, it's that the best advice about travel nursing for travel nurses doesn't come from me or an agency. It comes from you and your peers. That's what this podcast is all about. Travel nursing and your experiences on the road. Welcome to the Atlas Life.